So back in Nuke, let's bring this Photoshop file. I saved it back as a TIFF file, but the file format is really not the crucial thing here. What we have now is, if we compare in the viewer, what we have is the difference between this and this. Just a quick spot healing brush, a little bit of a clone stamp, a little bit of a manual brush, and we have this patch. Okay, now let's set up the projection. And that should go very, very straightforward because we have the camera, the geometry that we want to project on. We have the image source, and we also know that at frame 171, we need the camera that should be frozen and become our projection camera, right? Let's quickly set this up. Let's maybe make a bit more room now. I don't need that background input anymore. And can probably nudge things here a little bit. Okay. So we'll copy this camera at that same frame so that we can lose the animation on it with the current values. This time it's important for translate and rotate. And no animation on all knobs. Maybe call it projection camera. Say frame 175, 171 that is, and bring the shader to project with. So project 3D. Camera over there, image here, and geometry here. Now let's take a look at the 3D scene. And what we have is this, where this is the part of the geometry that gets the coverage with the cleaner texture, right? If we were to compare, for example, how that would project from the original frame, that would be very simple to do. Just switch this image input for the undistorted footage, and we get this, right? We also get the fact that our image sequence came in as a JPEG with no default opaque alpha channel. So if we were ever to have to combine projecting directly from the image sequence and then maybe some Photoshop prepared files, we would want to enable the auto alpha on this thing. Now, the only thing different when we switch the projection sources would be what was done in Photoshop. Let's do that. Here we go. Okay, now how does that show over the backplate, and how do we put it all together? Well, in just about the same way as we did with the Red Rocks footage. It's just that this time it's going to be simpler. We're not going to even attempt any UV unwrappings from Scanline Renderer. We're not going to try to stabilize the camera any differently than what it's doing right now. So all we need is a merge to show from, I guess I'll move that node on this side. And we'll plug the merge B input to come from the lens undistorted footage and the A from the Scanline Renderer. Now when we look at that, we should see this little thing, which if I let it cache, let's quickly do that. If I let it cache, you'll see some obvious, shortcomings and kind of discrepancies. But remember, we haven't isolated just that area of the patch that we want to project. Currently, we're projecting the overall frame, and the overall frame that we prepared in Photoshop. And where it is getting projected is the overall geometry that we prepared, modified in Maya, and then brought back. So when you see that bit of a cutoff, that is basically the edge of the geometry, which is getting the projection on it. right? But the technicals of it are in place. We have the patch seemingly in place, tracking, behaving prospectively as you would expect, it seems like. Look, let me just see it in real time. And yeah, it seems like it. So all we need to do is just isolate the area of that Photoshop file that we want to actually see projected. Let's do that with a quick roto. I'll stop the playback. And that roto obviously is going to plug here. Let's take a look at it. And add the roto, hitting O in the node graph, and then choosing what area we want. I'll give it obviously a bit of a feather for a better blend. And initially my guess would be that we want to cover up maybe about this area. We'll see once we pre-multiply and then see how it merges back over the video plate. We'll see if we need to extend this, and we, like I said, we'll feather it in a second. So for right now, let's knock out everything else. Pre-multiply by RGBA, which would mean that now it is getting projected only on this area of the geometry, right? And let's see how it looks like, what it looks like at the merge level. I can see some trees here, which means that we probably need to mask a little bit further to the left if I wanted to get rid of those. So let me create a second viewer real quick so that I can look at the roto on one side and then see the result of it on the other in the other viewer. I just hit Control I to quickly create a new viewer. Of course, you can do that here. And well, let me split the viewer by dragging and dropping this tab on the right side of it. So now, when we extend this mask, and I'm keeping in mind that I'm still on the same frame, so not trying to animate this mask. Ideally, we shouldn't have to be animating it. It kind of sometimes would depend on the topology and how complex that is. But for right now, let's try and get away with it as it is. Let's see if that would cover up what I need. This little thing we'll address with pre-multiplication. We might not have to pre-multiply by the RGBA, but let's first take care of the profile of that mask. And then we'll worry about the alpha around the edges. It seems like it's coming a little bit low here, so maybe I should push it up a bit, avoiding that vehicle here, the taller one. And with that, let's now try pre-multiplying just by the RGB so that we lose that artifact that we were getting here around the edge. And maybe give this a test by caching a few frames. Let's see. The only way to truly scrutinize and discover issues would be to be able to see it in real-time playback and then step frame by frame where necessary. Is this something that I need to get rid of, or is it an artifact, or is it maybe one of these posts similar to what we have on this side? We'll have to find out in a second. But at this point, I'll just pause the video so that I can generate enough cache, maybe the whole timeline, to truly test it. And then we'll make necessary changes if we have to, as I think we probably will, at least some color changes or maybe animating a couple of points on the roto. Let's do that in the final lesson for this exercise.